Evaluation, planning, execution. Those are maybe the three more important elements when we decide to make a move in chess. Hi friends, I hope you're doing great. We are going to talk today about how to make decisions over the chessboard. I talked about this idea of evaluation, planning, execution in my last video that was about rook games, but I thought it was just necessary to show how this could work in a middle game position. So here we have this position that I saw with some of my students in the last weeks, and when I talk about the evaluation of a position, I usually tell my students to focus on 5 questions uh, to try to keep it simple. This idea is from Jacob Agar, one of the most famous chess trainers in the world. He uses a list even shorter than mine. He doesn't use the first 2 elements that I'm going to mention, but I would rather use those ones too. I will explain why in a little bit. So, what are those questions that we should use when we evaluate a position? Well, those questions are: number one, material. Why material? Well, it's not a question that actually expect most people to use when they are playing a game of chess, because usually you are aware of what is the material situation. But when you are solving an exercise, tactical or strategic exercise, you should ask yourself that. I've seen so many people, students, even masters, mess up with their evaluation because they did not check the material balance at the start of the exercise. So I will be totally okay with one of my students if he doesn't ask himself what is the material situation over the board, but when we are going to study and train, we should do it. Number 2 question is king safety. We should always consider what is the king's safety situation. If a king is exposed, that per se does not mean that we are going to attack the king, but at least we should consider it and see if there are some hidden resources that could help us to attack the king. And if that is not the case, well, okay, we could not do it, but we should always try to find ways to go for the enemy king. Question number 3, weak pawns, weak squares. We should always try to figure out if there are weak pawns or squares that are really important on the position. In this case, for example, a typical weak pawn is the d6 pawn that is in an open file and cannot be protected by another pawn. Okay. Also, the d5 square is a square that we could call a weak square. And if you think about it, it's the same situation for this pawn. This square cannot be protected by a pawn, so a piece could land there. But I want to talk about that a little bit more in a second. First, let's go to the next element. Best and worst pieces. It's always important to, when we evaluate the position, to consider what are the best and worst pieces on the position. And again, I will talk about that in this position in a little bit. Finally, we should always, and this is the question that we should do every single move, exercise or game. What does the other guy wants to do? We should always consider what are the ideas and plans of the other guy. That for the evaluation part. Then we should make our plan. And the plan should be something that doesn't change every move if we did the evaluation part properly. Sometimes it could change. Something could happen in the position that make things take a different turn. But usually is not what happens in most chess positions. The positions are more or less stable for a while in chess, okay? More or less, at least. Sometimes something crazy could happen, a guy could sacrifice a piece that could change everything, but in chess, if you play chess long enough, you know that that doesn't happen in every single move in every game. And finally, the execution. The execution is the part where we check that our idea is okay. And how do we check that? Well, we analyze the position, We analyze the move that we want to play and see if it works. And we also, once again, consider how is the other guy going to play or react to our move. The move could look really great, and we could feel pretty sure about playing that move. But what happens if when we play that move something changed in the position and he could have a really strong reaction that he didn't have before? It could be a disaster for us if we don't consider that. So always before playing our move, we need to check if the other guy has a strong reaction to our idea. So let's go a little bit more in depth about these 3 points then. Evaluation, plan, execution. Those are, by the way, Griva's words for the thought process in chess. So once again, evaluation is a part of the game where we consider what are the most important elements. For this, at least in the case of my students, they use 5 questions. And those 5 questions should help us to identify what are the most important elements in the position. Once we identify those elements, our plan should go towards that way, towards those elements. What I mean is, in this case, for example, the main element I could say is the d6 backwards pawn. So white should try to play in that direction. Then white will make his plan. For example, play rook fd1. He will consider to play this move, right? It looks like the logical idea if you want to attack this pawn. Put more pressure on it. Once you decide, okay, this seems like the logical way to go, you should start checking what the other guy is going to do to react against that. Like, okay, I'm gonna play that. He doesn't have a clear, good plan here. What if I play that? Well, what happens is that he will play almost certainly rook fd8 or rook ad8. But if you are really aware and you are used to think in these terms in chess, you will realize, oh, black actually next is playing pawn d5. And actually I don't have a good way to stop that. He's going to play pawn d5 and he's going to have a great position. Because the weak pawn and square that he had are going to basically disappear. But if you are good enough on this, you're going to realize some other things going on here. For example, I don't think the worst piece for white, as some students say, is the bishop on g2 or the bishop on g7. At least they have an important role fighting for the center. Let's get rid of these lines, okay? No, not you guy. This guy. Especially this bishop on g2 helps me to control d5 and make difficult for black to play d5. Now, I think the worst piece in the chessboard right now is the knight. Especially the one is the knight on e2. Look at this knight. No good squares for this poor guy. So Smyslov, that was white in this game. This game is Smyslov Denker. Old game, I think, of the 50s. Well, Smyslov was a really great positional player. Let me show you his next moves. He realized that the main element here was then this guy and this guy. He realized black wants to play pawn d5. So he decided to play rook c1 to play c4 and reinforce his control over d5. Black here make, I don't think, the best move. By a mile, play f5. Is he trying to attack on the king side? I don't think actually he's going to succeed here. He has no reason to show an advantage on the king side. White plays c4. And here, another move that I really don't like. Black took. Now, white reinforces his control over d5. Got a good square for his worst piece. And the diagonal for his bishop that before it was bad, now is open, and you could argue that that is the best bishop of all the bishops over the chessboard. Now, white play a really strong move, knight c3. The pawn on c4, because the pressure of the rook on the c file actually cannot be taken. Queen takes knight e4, will be really strong. d6 is falling, and if that pawn falls, and with the diagonal open here, and both bishops hitting the queen side, well, this will collapse real fast. The rook is coming to c7 too in some lines. Disaster. And bishop takes also is terrible. How do you get this ping to disappear? You're going to lose something big here. So white did not waste tempo into improving his pieces. And now black played knight f5. I think black is just playing moves, to be honest. Was playing moves. What is the purpose of knight f5? Here, well, we will go back to this position in a bit. White took knight e4. Knight e4. Black took. And this is now clear advantage for white. This guy is as weak as ever. My knight is way better than before. Look at my bishop. This bishop, yes, controls d5. That's good. But this one is terrible. This guy is still weak. This square now can be occupied by the knight and the bishop. It only can be protected by one piece. But the most important part is look at how consequent has been white with his plan. Control d5, bring a piece there. What is black playing for? Now let's keep going. More pressure on d6. You don't want that guy to fall, right? So black play here. I think white brought the rook to c1. Not sure here about the moves, but I'm sure about the resulting position here, here, here. And now, again, the things didn't change that much in the position. Like if you ask the questions, you are going to figure out that maybe compared to before, the black's king is weaker. But other than that, most things are like the same, right? d6 is weak, and d5 is weak, and what will be the easiest way to continue here as white? Well, to reinforce the pressure. Play rook c3 and rook d3. Again, you're playing with a plan, with an idea that is to attack the weakest point on the enemy position, the d6 pawn. Because my position is better, look at how black cannot do anything against this. It's really hard for him to stop my plan. So let's say I play like this, black plays maybe this move, rook here, bishop here. I could come with queen d2, I guess, and d6 is going to fall sooner or later. Not much black can do about it. This will be a logical way to continue, but again, it's a plan, and that plan comes from our evaluation of the position. And when we are going to execute this plan, we should check what ideas has the other guy to counter our plan. In the game, this was not played, but the move that was played is really strong too. I love it. Knight c3. Why knight c3? Well, there is a threat here to put more pressure. The knight will also hit a7. Black decided to move the queen, so the knight will not come with tempo, but now a really great move. Bishop d5. We're gonna trade the bishop on e6, and then we are gonna have a monster knight against a terrible bishop. Monster knight against a terrible bishop. In a way, we improve our position. You could argue, well, that doesn't weaken the king's position for white. Well, how are you going to exploit that? Yeah, there are some holes and white squares, but because my pieces are more active, it's not hard to find that black has no way to exploit that. And you will be tied to defend your pawn d6. This follows. I play rook d3, white double rooks, increase the pressure. Not sure here, I think I'm missing a move. Oh no, I'm not missing it. Rook d5. And here black play queen g4. And of course we can take d6 now. It's just that it will be a stupid move. Why? Well, once again, we have all this fantastic plan about putting pressure on d6, improving our pieces. And by the way, fun thing to notice. Before our knight on e2 was our worst piece. Now it's arguably your best. That is how mastery works. Master players have this skill to improve the pieces and make their guy pieces worse. That is just amazing to see. But well, here going back, remember evaluation. I don't think that evaluation changes that much in the last 10 moves. The problems are more or less the same for black, even if some things you could tell got worse. Then planning, that has been always related with the d file, the d5 square, the d6 pawn. Execution. Here is the moment where if we decide, oh, okay, we are playing for d6, we should take the pawn, we should check that it works. If we play knight d6 because, oh, finally, I'm getting the pawn, we will need to be ready for a hard awakening, because then this could happen. And in this position, I don't think white is winning like ever. My plan is to, well, if you take on e4 immediately, no way white is winning this. At best, he's going to get a draw here. The rooks are going to come together and murder the white king if I'm not careful. So probably I have to play this. And the material will be totally equal now, but white pieces are tight. Yeah, I don't think white is winning here ever, and he's the only one on risk of losing this position. So after queen here, white play rook d3, that by the way covers f3. King g2 also was a really good move. Black is going to lose the pawn. Like if you go back, I will play queen d2, I think, then I will take on d6. Yeah, black will be using a worse, actually losing position. Why? Not only the pawn down, but if d6 falls, e5 is going to be weak. Look at this king now. My rooks are going to be more active, my heavy pieces, invading across the d line. Something similar happened in the game, but I think this show already what I wanted to show. How should we make decisions in middle games? At least in strategic middle games. There are some positions that are really crazy, and you should not waste your time asking move after move if this or that pawn is really weak, if you are calculating how not to lose a piece or not to get checkmated, or how to do it to the other guy. And even in strategic positions, we should not ask every single move the 5 questions, but we should from time to time do it. And if something changes drastically in the position, we should do it too. We should get used to ask ourselves those useful questions. What is about material balance if we don't have it clear? King safety, weak squares and pawns, best and worst pieces, and what does the other guy wants to do for evaluation. We will then find the main elements in the position. For example, right in this position, of course, d6 pawn, d5 square, and then we should make a plan that our plan should go around those elements. And before we play the move that we plan to play, we should check that is the best move. We should check that the enemy doesn't have a good counter against that idea. And how to improve in our decision making, because it's not enough to ask these questions, right? Like anyone can ask those questions, and that will not make you a master in a strategy. You could still play really shitty moves even using the right questions. Well, that is why it's important to study these kind of games, to learn the patterns, the ideas that the masters use, so we can use them in our games. We can have a creativity related with our knowledge that will help us to improve our intuition, our decision making, that will help us to be a really strong strategic players. I guess that is, well, one of the approaches that you can use to improve in your decision making in chess. Some people, for example, when it's about the questions or the elements, if you want to focus on that, and for elements I mean things like weak pawns, weak squares, bad course pieces, use more things. One that comes to mind is open lines, another one is space advantage, development. It's not that I don't consider those things in my games, and I think as you grow as a player, it's easier for you to use other questions. But when you're starting to improve in chess, definitely you should not try to go crazy asking 20 different questions about what is happening in the position. Just focus on those 5 that I mentioned and start trying to grow from there. Okay, that's all for now. I hope this helps you to understand better how to make decisions in chess, at least in positions that are not super tactical. That's all for today, friends. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.